Hello, my name is Kyle Ostrick, and welcome to the Zesty Show. Today we have a question from Michael Macarone, and that is, how do you think your life has changed since quarantine? And I've been thinking about this question a lot ever since it's come in, and thank you a lot, Michael, for submitting a question. Anyone who wants to submit a question for me to talk about can send it on my P.O. box, link in description. But I like to start this question. I think it starts before quarantine actually started. During school, I used to watch anime and I'd read comics all the time. And of course, this I already said this is before the pandemic started. And after quarantine ended, I've noticed a pretty substantial drop in my interest for reading comics and watching anime, two of my favorite hobbies that I used to have. I think I mostly dropped these hobbies in my senior year out of boredom and oversaturation of the two activities. Keep in mind, I've been watching anime and reading comics since I've been in middle school, and that interest definitely peaked in activity during quarantine. I have vivid memories of staying up late to finish like just a story arc, usually around 3 to 3:30 in the morning. And I know I wasn't the only person doing this. I know there are many people during quarantine staying up late during this. People felt isolated during the time and quickly turned to media for entertainment and coping mechanisms. And this led to larger communities invested in these shows and stories. And this definitely leaked on to the social media outlets like TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and definitely others that I haven't mentioned right now. As these mediums that were usually referred to were cult mediums, and smaller groups of people that had a large interest in these began to get more traction, and more companies and studios took quick notice of this and started producing more. And I think that's really what started the decline of my quarantine pastimes, as I would define them, as a quick oversaturation of the market kind of killed my interest. At the beginning of quarantine, my hobbies were able to be well managed with school since a lot of stuff wasn't being released for shows. I remember over the summer, I probably watched the summer of 2020, I watched only one new show ever, and that was something new to me. And so keeping up with these productions was very nice. Let me start new books and shows without feeling pressured to watch whatever was new at the time. During this time, I found some of my favorite shows and comics like JoJo's Bizarre Adventures, Slam Dunk, Mr. Miracle, and more. It was fun to talk to the communities around these mediums that were growing during a difficult time like COVID. It gave me a great amount of comfort, letting me meet all these other people that shared similar interests, and I was able to manage my own time effectively. And it was the most beautiful thing in the whole world. It was so good, and I had no signs of slowing down. Well, until now. I'm trying to say this in the least pretentious way I can possible because I know it's gonna sound like my interest died because I liked them when they were niche and small and got mad when they became more mainstream and popular. But that's not what I'm trying to convey or get across. What really happened is the market of anime and comics became very flooded and oversaturated with new shows and stories that it quickly turned me away from wanting to start anything new. To put it into perspective, Marvel and DC, two very big companies, I'm not going to talk about the comics or anime right now. This is just an example of what happened. They released 13 shows and movies in 2021. By no means are Marvel and DC unpopular, and they make probably the most money in theaters. But pre-quarantine, we probably get at most three projects from Marvel and maybe two if we're lucky from DC. Keeping up with these overarching stories that took place across the cinematic universe became a chore and so stretched out, and I couldn't keep up with these like 12 episode, 1 hour long TV shows that came out every couple months. It became too much for me when I had to do schoolwork as well. And I think that's really what started the decline. I remember going into going into the next school year for 2021, and my friends were watching Demon Slayer, Attack on Titan, Chainsaw Man, and I just couldn't keep up while I was doing this when I had to do Zoom meetings too for the schoolwork. And reading comics were a much more viable way of keeping up with my interests because comics you can keep up with your own pace. It's an issue, but you're reading. You read at your own pace. And, but that also quickly became oversaturated too. DC at the time of 2021 had 50% Batman books, and that was like 13 different Batman comics. Or not 13, sorry, it was more like 10. And I just didn't care to see the same character doing the same thing or his different family and side characters. I became so bored reading those comics because I didn't care to see Batman anymore. It became too much. I love Batman, but I couldn't do it anymore. And I think another thing that had to do with my quarantine pastimes dying out was the fact that school started again, like I mentioned before, and it just became too much to do schoolwork and watching anime at the same time. I developed really bad, uh, how do I say this? Really bad tendencies during quarantine. That's right, tendencies to stay up super late and not do any work because I want to watch these shows or read these comics. And that really put that really hit my grades when I first started school again, and that's really what made me stop. Like thinking like, oh, I can't really do this anymore. I gotta kick it up. And I also realized a lot of my passions that I've kept since quarantine are much more in line with my future. I've always drawn, and I've always listened to music. But as I'm going into as I'm going into college and I'm finishing up my high school career, these are things that'll probably stay with me for the rest of my life. I'm doing communication design in college, so it makes sense that I'll continue to draw and get better and practice and do it as a just like a pastime too, because it's something that I'm going to continue for the rest of my life. It's something I'm not going to stop doing. Taking a break from shows or comics is something I can do because it takes time away from actual work I need to do. Music as well. It's it's something that I can listen to while I'm doing work, and it's also something I have a really passionate hobby in. Not like actually making music, but doing analyses on music. It's super quick because I can do it while I'm working, and I can just pick out lyrics and I can share it with my friends. It's something that I feel is a lot easier to keep up with in, instead of shows and comics. So, how has my life changed since quarantine from now, especially my hobbies? I would say that for sure. Um, they have changed in a way that my hobbies have become much more in line with what I'm going to do in the future, like music and art. I need to be able to analyze media for my for my major in college in the future, and these two mediums of entertainment have music, sorry, not two music and art these two art forms, drawing, they've become much more viable to work with compared to, say, watching a show or reading a book. It's much more easier for me to take out a book and do a quick sketch and practice for 5 minutes than to just read a chapter of a book or to just listen to music while I'm doing, say, homework or just doing the dishes. All right. Well, thank you for the question, Michael from Italy. I do appreciate all questions that I get. And like I said, you can send me any more questions that you want to my P.O. box. And thank you guys so much for listening. Have a great day. Thank you.